Hi guys, welcome to our digital classroom. Mr. Barr here, and just want to let you know I'm ready. Got hand sanitizer. Let's go ahead and get this started, shall we? So for this week, you're finishing up chapter 10. And so what I want to do is go ahead and split my screen so you can see the PowerPoint. I want to walk you through a couple of the things real quickly. So I know it's going to be a really fast chapter 10, but I just want to explain a couple things. Okay, so I hope at least me talking about it helps you out. So chapter 10 is all about expanding west all the way to the Pacific Ocean. We're talking Oregon, we're talking Texas independence, the war with Mexico, and of course the grand prize of them all, as you can see behind me, California. So this chapter seems to be talking about a lot of random places, but in the whole idea, it's not random at all. All right, so let's get started. So first things first, there's several trails that people take to go west. And by west at this point, we're talking basically the Mississippi River, as far close to California as we can possibly get. And the first people that did this were the mountain men. They're big, burly, bearded guys. They traded fur, so they went and hunt beavers. And what they did was they mapped out trails so more people can actually go follow those trails for the idea of becoming fur trappers, making it rich, finding cheaper land, restarting themselves. There's a movie, The Revenant, right here on the right side that kind of explains that a little bit as well. So those guys really started mapping it out. All right. Next group. Okay. Well, this idea of manifest destiny. So manifest destiny is the American belief that God wants the United States to go from sea to shining sea. Nothing is going to stand in the way. Not one thing. Okay. So it's our destiny. God has determined that we are making that happen. There's another group that heads a little west, and we call them Mormons. Now, Mormons are a group of Protestant Christians, so they're not Catholic. When they started, they received a lot of threats, a lot of anti-Mormon behavior, or anti-Mormon. I guess you can say they got made fun of a lot. So let's just put it that way. It's a sect of Christianity started by a guy named Joseph Smith, claiming he had visions from God, and they head to what's now today Utah. And today Utah has the largest population of Mormons in the entire United States, if not the world. He actually gets brutally murdered, and a guy named Brigham Young led them to Utah. And that's Brigham Young in the upper right-hand corner, bottom left-hand corner, really popular university, BYU. On the right, that is Joseph Smith. On the left, that's actually Senator Mitt Romney. He ran for president in 2012, and even he got a little bit of backlash for being a Mormon, as you can see the front of that book there. Now, that takes us to chapter 2, or section 2. So I'm going to go through section 1, section 2 rather quickly, because you guys have already done this. At least you were supposed to. But here we go, okay? Texas was settled by people from the United States and Mexico. Famous frontiersman Davy Crockett used to be in Congress. Really butted heads with Andrew Jackson, and Andrew Jackson helped beat him in the House of Representatives. So Andrew Jackson supported someone else. So Davy Crockett takes off, goes to Texas. Texas isn't a state yet. Texas belongs to Mexico. Now, the Spanish offered huge land for people to settle in because, unfortunately, for where Mexico is, Mexico City, the heart of the Mexican government, it's really far from California, Texas, Arizona, Nevada, okay? The Spanish offered huge land. Mexico wins its independence from Spain, but there's going to be, of course, a culture clash between the Americans moving in and Mexico wanting to maintain Texas as part of Mexico, okay? Now, tensions start to grow. Of course, you have a culture clash. Mexico demanded that Americans do 3 things. One of them, learn Spanish. 2, become a Catholic. Most Americans were Protestant. And 3, no slavery. Now, as you can imagine, Texas, down south, a lot of people from the southern states coming in to settle there. And guess what? They're bringing their slaves. Okay. Now, what happens is there's a small battle that happens in Gonzales, Texas, where Texans and Tejano soldiers, so Mexican soldiers that are from Texas who side with the Americans, okay? They put a cannon in front of a fort, and the Texan and Tejano defenders, fly that flag at the bottom left-hand corner there that says "Come and take it." Okay, and this is on the right. It's a modern bumper sticker that I've actually seen when I've been in Texas. Okay, so come and take it. You're not coming to take the one cannon we have, and then the Texas independence is on. Okay, now it's only lasts about 6 months. The entire war lasts 6 months. There's a Spanish mission called the Alamo, and a 26-year-old Colonel William Travis is in charge of it. And he gets a couple of famous people to help him out. Davy Crockett, former politician, famous Indian tracker, and Jim Bowie, world famous gambler, knife fighter. This guy got into a brawl one time, was shot 3 times, and also stabbed. Okay, and he survived. They're all defenders of the Alamo, and this is in the springtime, and basically you have 2,000 Mexican soldiers or so against anywhere from 185 to 260 Tejano and Texan defenders. That's the Alamo today, most visited thing in Texas. This is actually a scene from the 2004 movie, The Alamo, which if we were in class, we would have watched. So if you feel like watching it, you can. Now, for 13 days, the Mexican government surrounds the Alamo. And on the 13th day, General and President of Mexico, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, orders an attack before the sun comes up. All Alamo defenders are killed except for women and children. Okay, and historians estimate that between 400 and 600 Mexican casualties total. How many dead, how many wounded, who knows? Shortly after that, the Battle of San Jacinto starts, and they're led by Sam Houston, General Sam Houston, which of course is what Houston is named after today. It's the final battle of the Texas Revolution, and it lasts 18 minutes. 12 Americans dead, 700 Mexican soldiers dead. Okay? It's a slaughter. And as you can see in the bottom corner here, that's Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. That's Sam Houston. This is Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. And in exchange for his life, he signs over Texas to the Texan soldiers. Now, Texas becomes its own country for about 9 years. And Sam Houston becomes president twice, actually, 2 different times. He wants to be part of the United States. Andrew Jackson said no because, remember, we're balancing that slave and free state thing at this point. Texas does become a state in 1845. And so the feeling of manifest destiny, because Texas is huge. Texas today, I think, is the 2nd most populous state in our country. And so it's huge. And Mexico doesn't like it. Mexico agreed to have Texas become its own country. All right, next up, real quick. This is the newer stuff. Section 3, Mexican-American War. Why is it significant? I don't go into a ton of battles here, so I'm going to do this as quickly as I can. So you can take your textbook, you can read these out. So if we were in class, I would actually want you to write down a couple of things. Manifest destiny, that idea that God says we're expanding west. Acquiring new territory. Americans are flooding Western territories, okay? And we're talking California, Arizona, New Mexico, of course, Texas at this moment. And if you're Mexico, you're keeping a close eye on this, because what's going to stop the Americans from doing it? The answer, not much, because we know where we're at today. That group at the bottom, Californios, so those are Mexican descendant who do live in California. There's not that many of them, and they don't really feel all that Mexican because they're so far away from the capital, from Mexico City. All right, so here's what happens. Mexican-American War. New President James Polk orders Zachary Taylor to set up his soldiers right here, okay? Now, Mexico recognizes the Nueces River as the border, while the Americans recognize today's border, the Rio Grande River, as the border. But what happens if you put people right here that are part of the military for another country? It feels like an act of war. That's exactly what it is. And President Polk knew. He knew Mexico was going to fire the first shot, so he sets people up right here on that border. Mexico open fires first, and then, of course, Polk can go back to Congress and say, American blood has been shed on American soil. But everything in red is disputed territory. So, baited them into firing the first shot. Now, the war is kind of half and half at home. A lot of Americans, believe that manifest destiny should happen. A lot of Americans think it's unnecessary war, that we're picking on a smaller, weaker country. This war is not going to go well for Mexico because they're lacking in technology as well. And just, they got done with the revolution some 20 years before. They're not in any condition to do this at this point. All right. It really starts off the Bear Flag Republics. As you can see, the early flag that we had on the left, the California flag, kind of looks like a pig. And then you have today's. Now, a group of Americans seized Sonoma, California, and declared it independent from Mexico. All right. The U.S. Navy starts coming in, and there's some small battles up and down the California coast, including San Diego and Los Angeles. Now, this map shows everything in red are American troop movements. As you can see, we invade mainland Mexico from 3 different areas, okay? And it's going to culminate, ooh, I know you guys like this. It's going to culminate in the capture of Mexico City, okay? So Mexico surrenders, war's over, America gets what they wanted, lose a total of 13,283 men, and only 3,000 of those are from combat, by the way. If you take a look at the screen, United States wins about 50 battles, 2,000 combat deaths, 10,000 die from disease. Mexico wins about 6 battles, give or take. And they have about 25,000 deaths, okay? And here's what happens. Everything in red becomes part of the United States, okay? We call this the cession, C-E-S-S-I-O-N, and it's from the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And now, the United States gives Mexico 15 million. A little bit later, we purchased this little tiny area called the Gadsden Purchase, southern Arizona. If you've never been there, there's not much there. What's the point? Railroad. That's what it's for. Okay. Now, there's a video that you can watch from Crash Course. It's pretty awesome. Chapter 10, Section 4, real quick. Gold Rush, California Gold Rush. Gold is discovered, and of course, people follow the money. So they go to about the San Francisco area in about 1848 to 1849, hence the football team, the 49ers. And the football team is very similar to the people in that they rarely win, but when they do, they strike gold. So this past season, not a bad year for them. They did really well. Now, life was rough. Goods were expensive. Most miners found nothing. You know who got rich? The people who sold food, repaired clothing, and sold tools. Eggs were $10 a dozen back then. It's a lot of money. The population in San Francisco, as you can check from this chart, from 1849, where it's a little under 20,000, 51 years later, it's almost 150,000 people. And today, it's one of the largest cities in the United States and the world. Okay. The gold rush also brings immigration. From 1849 to 1853, 24,000 Chinese men come to California, and they work hard. You can see that's a real picture there at the bottom left-hand corner. There's also a guy named Levi Strauss, German immigrant. You've all heard of Levi jeans. They're still around today. These jeans are tough pants. They're work pants, and now they're fashion today. All right. Now, impact of the gold rush, to wrap it all up, California's population booms. It becomes a state in 1850. Californians and Native Americans feel displaced. And so what that means is this used to be their home, and now someone else is coming to take it over, okay? The culture is different, and of course, there's going to be a lot of tension, even after the American Civil War in the 1860s. Basically, up until 1920-ish, there's wars going on with the Native Americans. And so we'll be talking about that later. That will go ahead and end our lecture series on Chapter 10. I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out. See ya.